Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen stories. In this video, an insane trespassing Karen called the police on me while being on my own property. She claimed that she has a right to use my pool. Let's dive right into the video. So this is fresh in my mind because it happened a few weeks ago. There's people being entitled and then there are Karens that don't give a crap about anything. Sorry, this whole thing feels so surreal after the fact. So I live in a suburban neighborhood. I moved in half a year ago since I was looking for a new place that was closer to my office. The neighborhood was only a 15-minute drive compared to the 40-minute drive that I normally took, so that was the main reason I moved there. The other was because of the property itself. The house was a nice size for a single person, nothing that I would have trouble maintaining on my own, but what drew me to it was the private pool in the backyard. There was already a large fence around the backyard area, so there was not an issue of other people wandering onto the property to look for somewhere to take a dip. The pool did border the community's playground, but there were no trespassing signs that were up around the property that made me feel secure. The realtor lived nearby and insisted that the neighborhood was quiet. Most of the neighbors were older, and if there were kids, they were older as well. I would not have to worry about screaming babies or younger kids trying to make trouble. The place seemed too good to be true. Well, the only reason it didn't was the price tag, but at the time it was hard to find something affordable anyway, so I settled on the house less than a month later and was able to move in. Now onto what happened. A few weeks ago, I opened up the pool since the weather's been getting warmer. I love taking the afternoons on the weekend to relax and spend hours floating around in my pool. I've gotten the opportunity to talk to a few of my neighbors because I've been out while they are walking their dogs or exercising. We usually talk through the slats in the fence or through the gate, but no one was weird about coming by and saying hello. A few people even got me to join their little neighborhood Facebook group, which I didn't expect to be helpful, but it came in handy if there was bad weather and people posted where there was issues with street drains or slippery spots, etc. Anyway, I digress. So I went out to grab groceries on a hot sunny Saturday afternoon and planned to hit the pool once I got everything inside the house. I pulled up to my driveway and noticed that there was another car parked on the street nearby my house. I did not recognize it, but I didn't think that it was that weird. With the neighborhood park so close, the parking lot filled up quickly, so I thought it was someone who was actually at the park. I cannot even tell you what went through my mind when I heard a splashing sound from my backyard and saw a woman swimming in lazy circles around the pool. I think my brain short-circuited for a minute. We are going to call her Karen for the time being because the interaction we had at the start was enough to make me ticked off at her entitled behavior. Hello? Karen, oh hello there, isn't it just a wonderful day for a relaxing swim? Me finally coming to my senses. What do you think you're doing here? This is private property, you cannot be in there. Karen, oh don't make such a fuss. It is hot out and I figured I could take a dip to cool off. What's the harm in that? Me, the harm is the fact that this is not your pool. The fence surrounding the yard is metal and just a little over 8 feet. The lock on the gate had not been tampered with and it had not been unlocked either. It's a keypad rather than a traditional lock, so that meant that Karen literally climbed the hot metal fence to get into my private pool. The first thing I did was pull out my phone. I made sure that I started recording on the no trespassing signs and showed that the gate was still locked before I put the code to get into the pool area. I made sure to explain that this is how I found Karen, who was still swimming around my pool like she owned it. I did not make a move to try and remove her. I didn't get too close to the pool, just in case she attempted to splash me and my phone. I wanted to make sure I got as much as I could on film before I called the cops. Me, lady, I don't care if you thought the pool was private, it is not yours. You are trespassing on my property. Karen, but it was so inviting and the cover was off. I've been here for an hour and you're the first person to come tell me that I shouldn't be here. Me, hoping I can get more evidence that she didn't care at all about being on my property. And what about the no trespassing signs? Those are there for a reason. Karen, I'm starting to get chilly. Won't you be a dear and find me a towel I can use? I probably would have started cursing her out if I wasn't so dumbfounded by her sheer audacity, but I kept my cool. When I made no move to head into my house to grab her a towel, she muttered something too quiet for me to hear and started to get out. I thought I had won, but she went to grab a small bag she had on the edge of the yard, grabbed something out of it, and then jumped right back into the pool. Karen, hello? Yes, I'm currently being harassed by a man while I'm trying to enjoy a few hours in my pool. Can someone please come to this address and sort it out? I had not stopped recording until after she hung up the phone and gave me a smirk. Karen, I hope you're ready to be arrested. You have ruined such a wonderful day for me. The police took their sweet time to arrive and were able to get into the pool area since the gate was still unlocked and open. Karen was still floating around without a care in the world. At first, the officers approached me asking what I was doing on private property. Then I showed them my updated driver's license with the address of where we currently were. I showed them that the no trespassing signs were all over the fence and that the gate opened up by code, not a lock. One of the officers went over to Karen to get her statement, while I played the recording I took on my phone when I first got home. I'm glad that I was able to capture when I punched in the code, so it showed the officer that the gate had not been open when Karen arrived. Of course, the recording also picked up her phone call to dispatch, which had her claim that the pool was supposedly her property, not mine. The officer with me went over to where Karen was and told her to get out of the pool. They would get more of her statement down at the station. Karen did not like that, pointing out that I should also be going down to the station since I was the one she called the police on. The officers were firm, letting her know that I had proof that I lived on the property and she was the one that was trespassing. She tried to stall after getting out of the pool, making a scene about how no one checked her identification to see if she actually lived there, but the officers were able to gather up her belongings and identified her as living a few blocks away. Karen kept insisting that this was all some big misunderstanding, but the officers were quick to let her know that at the very least she could be arrested if she trespassed on my property again. They were taking her to the station as a courtesy in order to remove her from the premises, and it would be my decision if I wanted to press charges against her. She got very quiet after that, and the officers took her away without any more interruptions. I finally got my groceries into my house, RIP an entire tub of butter pecan ice cream, and decided to spend the rest of the afternoon sanitizing the pool since I had no idea what Karen had been doing before she decided to take a dip. While I waited for the chemicals to do their work before adding more, I knew I had to share what Karen did with the rest of the neighborhood, so I took the video I had of her from my phone and uploaded it to YouTube. I made the video private so only people with the link could access it, and I shared it to the neighborhood's Facebook group to make sure they were aware of what had happened. I wanted to bring awareness that there was someone in the neighborhood that was acting so entitled, but I got a lot of messages from the neighbors commending me on how level-headed I was during the whole ordeal. Karen was apparently not the most considerate person in the neighborhood, and I got a few comments from people letting me know their own stories about her. Apparently, she had a dog for a short time and refused to pick up after the dog, which got a lot of neighbors pissed. A few days later, I was contacted by one of the officers checking in to make sure that Karen didn't attempt to break into my pool area again. I told him she hadn't, and he was glad to hear it. He did ask if I wanted to press charges, and I decided not to. I figured the embarrassment of having the police take you down to the station in nothing but a bathing suit was humiliating enough. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, would you have pressed charges on Karen? Let me know in the comments, I'm really curious how you would have handled this. So OP further said, even though she had trespassed, there was nothing she did to damage my pool or backyard. If she had, then I would have absolutely pressed charges though. There was also another reason, but I didn't know about it until halfway through the week. So apparently, one of my neighbors shared my video link to one of those go viral video channels on Facebook and the video blew up. If I didn't think that Karen got her just desserts, the fact that nearly 300,000 people in one day watched her try to claim my pool as her own. I gave my pool a few days to get back to its normal level, so by the time the next weekend rolled around, I was able to finally enjoy it again. Now I feel like I will never have to worry about Karen or anyone else trying to get into my pool again. And the next one is a fantastic petty revenge story. And by the way, if you still enjoy these Karen stories, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to show your support. So my neighbor years ago opened her door into my truck and dinged it. I saw her do it, but she denied it and there were no witnesses or cameras. I filed a report but was told it was a he said she said situation and was a civil matter. I had just rebuilt a differential and had a jacked up pinion gear. She drove a 4-wheel drive half-ton Chevy. I don't know what gave me the idea to do this, but I put the pinion gear under her truck and I put a heavy HVAC zip tie around her drive shaft so it would slap the muffler. I knew what time she left in the morning, so I came out and watched for her. She backed out of the parking spot, tink 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 tink, and she stopped when she heard the noise and then she noticed the pinion gear on the ground. She got out and I walked up and asked her if something was wrong. She said her truck was making a funny sound and asked me if I knew what the pinion gear was. I told her it looked like it was part of a transmission and she better have it towed. She asked me if I knew of a good shop. Now, this was not originally part of my plan, but I just ran with it. I gave her the name of a shop that had a really bad reputation of being kind of shady. The truck was gone for 2 weeks. I asked her what she found out and she told me that the shop told her that she needed a new transmission and a bunch of other stuff. Apparently, she ended up spending something like $3,500 to fix my zip tie and used car part on the ground. I took my truck into a body shop and had the door fixed for about $300. Karen was a snobby bitch, and I know she was talking down to the people at the shop because she treated anyone that was not college educated with disdain. And yeah guys, even though I don't really like mechanics that scam people, I think in this situation the Karen certainly deserved it. The next one is a funny malicious compliance story. So I work at a clothing store on the sales floor. My job is basically to interact with customers to help them get what they are looking for and also fold, organize and store clothes. Now during my shift there was this table that was just packed with clothes with piles that went super tall, so I decided to start with that table. As I was working, I noticed there was a shelf under the table that was empty, and those shelves are normally used as storage for excess. And so my plan was to make normal piles and then store excess in those shelves. Cause some of the rules of how things should look just say that you need like 2 or 3 items of each size per pile and to sort them from biggest size at the bottom to smallest at the top. And there's also like an unwritten rule where if the pile ends up small, to then add more until it reaches the bottom of the price sign. So I do that, I make piles that reach the bottom of the sign and then store the rest. Now, as I was starting to store the excess, one of the managers passes by and asks what I was doing. And so I explain what I already said here, and he doesn't like it and he tells me to put everything on the table. So I explained to him why that's a bad idea, because I can make it harder for customers to get their size and easier for them to make a mess accidentally, but he does not care and just tells me to put everything back. So I do and just stack them, and the piles end up being very tall. For clarification, I'm 6'2" and some of the piles reached my chest. But that is what the boss wanted, so I finished and went away to do something else. Now for context, our store also has like something like a baby toddler area, so obviously parents sometimes bring their kids to buy clothes for them. Now after I had left the table to work on something else, a father stood next to the table to wait for his wife and he had his kid on his shoulder. I don't remember why, maybe it was to burp it or calmed it down, I don't know. But as the father was swinging from side to side to calm the baby, he accidentally hit the side of the table. And some of the piles that were on that side fell down behind the father. And as if it was a sign of the universe to show I had the right idea, just as the father was turning around to see that happened, the baby puked and because of the momentum covered a lot of the shirts that were now on the floor, and so we had no choice but to throw away those dirty clothes now. And seriously, there were a lot. Plus it got expensive because each shirt cost like $10 and there was easily like 10 to 15, maybe 20 shirts on the floor, so we lost a couple $100 there. And the worst part is that the first manager had told me to just stack them, tried to pass the blame onto me. But I explained what happened to another manager and they put the blame back on that first manager and him pay for the damages. Edit, I got something wrong here, I messed up, they did not make him pay. That was just something I misinterpreted from what I heard happened to him, because he did get called in by his superiors. Apparently, a lot of co-workers have had similar situations with that manager in the past, and I've been complaining about him. And yeah guys, if you have any interesting malicious compliance stories from your own life, then please feel free to share them in the comments, because I would love to read them. The next one is a revenge story about a landlord. I had a landlord in the past who slipped a 90-day notice requirement into the rental contract after I had signed it. I was house hunting, so at the end of my lease I asked to go to a month-to-month lease to make it easier to leave when the time came. Landlord and I agreed on a higher monthly price to compensate them for the lack of security, and I signed the contract at the office of a business they also owned downstairs. The landlord was not actually present, but one of their employees handled it. So then the contract is signed and they go to make a copy for my records, but are having an issue with the copier. After a few minutes, they ask if they can text me when they get it to work. I naively agree and head upstairs. 30 minutes or so later, they text me saying that they got the copier to work and I can come pick up my copy. I did not think to double check everything at the time, so for the next few months I just pay my monthly rent while I look for a home. Finally found the right place and the closing date was about 4 weeks out, so I immediately notified my landlord that I would be leaving on said date. The landlord responds that it's nice that I found a home, but I would be responsible for the next 2 months' rent after that as well due to the 90-day notification requirement in the contract. I'm totally confused now, so I go check my copy of the contract and sure enough, there's a stipulation in there about that. I also noticed that my initials from the top and bottom of each page, verifying that I've read that page, have somehow mysteriously shifted to being doubled up at the top of the page after this stipulation, with none on the bottom of that actual page. This was because they had inserted 2 lines of text detailing the 90-day reporting requirement after I had already signed the paperwork. They did not notice the formatting error it created, which was a dead giveaway of what was going on. I inform the landlord of this and notify him that this is not a legally binding contract due to this issue and state that I will not be paying any further rent beyond this month and expect my deposit back without penalty. Unfortunately, he persists with stating that this is a legally binding contract and he will pursue it in court in addition to withholding my deposit if I fail to pay. And well, I know I'm legally in the right, but I don't want to have to deal with courts to settle it as that takes forever, so I come up with an alternative plan. The one thing he had not thought about was the fact that the contract included all utilities, as the unit did not have separate meters and did not have any language forbidding excessive use of them. It just so happened to be a particularly cold winter, so I informed my landlord that if he wanted to persist with his demands, I would be inclined to leave all of the windows open, crank the heat as high as it would go, open the refrigerator door, run the water 24/7, etc. And if he entered the apartment without my permission to turn any of these items off, I would report him to the police. I got confirmation that he would not pursue the extra month's rent or security deposit within 20 minutes. Edit, just so everyone knows how the story ended, this happened around December of 2016, if I remember correctly, and I did get my security deposit back, etc. I did not pursue legal options because I didn't think it would end up being worth the time and trouble, though I understand the sentiment. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Since this story deals with guns, I feel the need to point out first that I live in a state where I can open carry and I have a permit for my gun. Safety is my #1 concern, so my biggest rule is that nobody touches my gun except for me. Not my friends, not my wife, and certainly not strangers. I keep it on my hip and most of the time my shirt covers it up, so it is not that noticeable. Even so, guns are pretty common around here, so even seeing it does not usually cause any problems. Now, my neighbor has a kid that I personally think is a little bit out of control. I can always hear screaming and him running around outside like a maniac. I've seen him run into a tree before and act like nothing happened. I don't have kids though, so maybe this is just how 7-year-olds act nowadays. His mother is her own type of menace that wants the world to bend over backwards for her son. If he is playing in the street with his friends, she expects cars to go down a different road instead of making them get out of the way. One day I was doing yard work and the kid was outside playing with his friends. That was when he must have looked over and spotted my gun against my hip. I don't know what they were playing and honestly I didn't even notice them until he came up to me and pulled on the leg of my pants. Even though I did not like this kid, I was not gonna be rude to a child, so I stopped what I was doing to see what he wanted. Me? Hey there, everything okay? Child? I wanna play with my friends. Can we borrow that so I can pretend to be a bank robber? He points right at my gun. Me? I'm sorry buddy, but that's not a toy. You cannot play with it. Kid? But I wanna play with it and you are not even using it. Me? It is dangerous. You cannot play with it. He goes running off and I have a bad feeling in my gut that something is gonna happen. I don't want to deal with his mother seeing my gun and starting a bunch of crap, so I take it off and go to the other side of my backyard and then put it away with my tools. It is nowhere near anybody and my dog is near there and would bark if there's a problem. I was right about my gut and his mother came right up to me with a face like she had just swallowed a lemon. Why did you tell my little angel no? He is crying now because of you. Me? Ma'am, he wanted me to give him my gun to play with. Mother? So? Let the boy play. Me? It's not a toy. This is a real gun that he can very easily hurt or even kill somebody with. Mother? I'm his mother and I said that he can play with it. Now hand it over to him right now. Me? Lady, you're actually crazy if you think I'm gonna give your demon child my gun. Get the hell off my property. She storms away and this time I actually think that things are settled. My gut had let me down this time because it turns out that my neighbor was not done trying to F with me. I had gone back to doing yard work and about 45 minutes later I hear my dog barking like crazy. That is not normal, so I stop and run over only to hear a gunshot ring out. I get to my backyard and see that she had stolen my gun, and when my dog tried to alert me, she shot him. I did not even care or think about the fact that she was armed. I walked right up to her and grabbed my gun back from her hands. I started screaming and calling her every name in the book I could think of. Anything short of putting my hands on her, you can bet that I said, and had her running off back to her house. I called the police and tended to my dog, who was luckily alive. She was a bad shot and ended up just getting him in the leg. It was still bad though, and I wanted to get him to the vet hospital as soon as I could. The police came, and when I quickly explained what happened, they then let me go so I could take care of my dog. The good news is that he was gonna be okay, and they got the bleeding to stop and removed the bullet. He was more upset at having to wear a cone to not lick the leg for a while than anything else. The bill was a lot, but I already planned on suing Karen for the money, in addition to the fact that police were 100% arresting her for animal abuse and misuse of a firearm. Civil court would have to wait until much later, but I did end up winning the money for the entire vet bill. I just wanted to gloss over that because I find the criminal charges much more interesting. She did not have any kind of gun permit, so just shooting the gun in general was illegal. Heck, probably even holding it was gonna be a charge, and of course shooting my dog got her a charge of animal abuse on top of that. Now, these two things alone were not actually gonna be enough to put her in jail, and she would have mostly ended up with community service or maybe house arrest. Digging deeper into her life though, they found something else to charge her with, and it related back to her son. Since she seemed to cater to her child, that meant he did not have to do anything he did not want to. That extended to things like going to school, where his mom just would not make him go. He did not have to see a doctor or a dentist or really anything that kids usually need. That plus a lot of empty alcohol containers in the house made it so they could charge her with criminal child neglect. That was something she could and did end up going to jail for, with the other charges stacking up against her as well. She didn't even try to deny not taking care of the kid properly and said that if he didn't want to do things, then he didn't have to. It's kind of hard to blame this behavior when that is what his mother brought him up thinking. So anyway, she went to jail, and the kid ended up getting adopted by some other members of the family that would have a close eye kept on them. I honestly hope that being in a different household teaches him some things about the right parent-child dynamics. I can only assume that her plan was to take the loaded gun and hand it off to her child. Then my dog scared her and she ended up shooting him before she could get away with stealing it fully. I hate to think what would have happened if the kid actually ended up with the gun and played with it. And yeah, ripe stars, actually it makes me kind of angry to see that people like this have children and that kids have to grow up in a household like this. Therefore, I am quite glad that the kid is now growing up somewhere else, and I hope this Karen won't see the light of day anytime soon. Before we end the video, I will read one last funny story from r/malicious compliance that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "You cannot use your allotted meal budget to tip." The story starts like this. So I travel a lot for work, and my company agreement is that I get a set amount for food every day. I don't really have a knack for fancy food, so I typically just get what I get and tip heavily to maximize the dollar amount. This was never a problem in the past until my company got acquired, and the new company is now aggressively cutting costs. Someone from HR emailed to me to tell me that I was financially on the hook for tips. Apparently, I could not expense them anymore. So now I just buy the food I eat from the grocery store, eat cheaply, and spend the rest on donuts and coffee for all of my coworkers everywhere I travel. There is a set budget for food every day. If you're gonna be a penny-pinching POS, I will find ways to spend that money within our agreement to give to others. Next time, I think I will feed the homeless. Need I remind my company that I'm doing them a favor by traveling because they don't want to pay full-timers in these areas? Don't be cheap. That's the moral of the story. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.